The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Welcome back to TKR, Tony Kurre Radio, and the Tony Kurre Radio Podcast Network. By the way, we're on every major industry, wherever you get your podcast. You're listening to it right now, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, anything through Tony Kurre Radio, Kurre with a K. You can listen to the shows, and one of our most listened to shows, because that Blazer Nation gets after it. Mark Ingram, the athletic director for the UAB Blazers, is called the UAB Blazers Director's Chair, and we do our show every single week. Mark, how you doing, brother? Everything good?
I'm excellent, partner. How you doing?
It's great to have you back on the show, and people are responding through info@tonykurreradio.net with email questions. We'll get to a couple of those during this show, and obviously loving the show and loving having you be so transparent as an athletic director to come on the show. We always talk about, I can get coaches on. We're working to get Trent Dilfer on next week, and that's great. We talk X's and O's, and we talk bigger picture stuff, but to pull the curtain back on what happens in college athletics is pretty amazing. A big curtain being pulled back in California right now. Chris Holden, a former San Diego State basketball player and the current chairman of the state legislature's Appropriations Committee, is proposing something called the College Athlete Protection Act, which calls for major money-generating college sports teams to create a fund that would pay players a share of their team's annual revenue, a portion of which would be held in a trust for the players until they complete their degree, which I think is a really interesting caveat to this whole thing. I read you the story before we started this morning. I know you've already seen it. Something's got to be done about the NIL thing. It's the wild, wild west gone crazy. And maybe if players are told, hey, listen, this is what you'll earn. And I do like the fact they must earn their degree to get that money. What's your thoughts on it as an athletic director?
Well, NIL's a mess, and we're not – there's two separate things. You've got NIL, that's true use of a person's name, image, and likeness, and then there are collectives. Collectives are pay for play. That's all it is, and there's no wink about it. It's what it is. We're just saying that if I was a donor and you were a player, I cannot pay you, but I can give the money to the collective and they can pay you. I mean, come on. It's really ridiculous that we're allowing this behavior and not sure how to fix it. And then there are certain members of the legislature who actually think this is good, and that it's positive. It's not positive. It's not positive for the teams. It's not positive for the kids. It creates a overinflated sense of their self and value over the value of the team. And so the schools that have seemingly done the best at this are also the ones who have the most kids in the transfer portal, and also seem to find themselves with a fairly average record. If you're just talking football, you can look last year at who those are. Then look at TCU, who had little to no success in that collective pay-for-play space, and they made it to the national title game because they found guys who, in the words of their head coach, they found guys who love playing the game and are really good at it and want to play for each other. And that's what generates a championship, not this pay-for-play nonsense. Give me what I think I'm worth. And there's not a player that's worth any of the numbers that are being bantied about. And then this, what you asked about out in California just reeks yet again of a person who played a sport, 20 years ago or whenever it was, and therefore thinks they understand college athletics, which they just don't. And I would say a person that would suggest this revenue sharing model doesn't understand business of any kind either. How are you going to fly the team around? How are you going to buy uniforms and feed them? If you're holding the money out to give it to the individuals, how are you going to operate as a team? It's not cheap to take these teams all over the place. And so, if the football team or the basketball team generates revenue, what about all the teams that don't generate revenue? That's how you fund those teams. That's how you pay those coaches. That's how you pay for their travel. They generate no revenue. So, and through Title IX, which is a positive thing, but that doesn't have anything to do with the NCAA.
Yeah.
Title IX is an educational amendment to the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Mm-hmm.
So doing those things is a complete lack of understanding of how the whole system works. And when you get a couple of these, whether they're influential or just loud lawmakers who played a sport or whose child played a sport, and then they act like they know everything there is to know about college athletics. That's what's created the problem the mess that we found ourselves in. As a former student athlete, I can tell you, going from being as a student athlete to working in the department, that's what made me realize how little I thought I knew.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know anything. You know your trainer, you know your coach, you know your strength coach, you know the equipment manager. That's who you know.
Yeah.
And that's all part of your team. You don't have any idea how how the business part works, the enterprise works at all.
Yeah. Mark Ingram, the athletic director for the UAB Blazers. It's called the UAB Director's Chair. We do it every single week here on the Tony Kurre Radio Podcast Network. You can also hear it on the TKR app. Download the TKR app. It's free. It plays 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week. Greatly appreciate his time. All right, so you're athletic director. I know this is a very broad question, and I haven't given you a lot of time to put together a blueprint for where we have to go. This all started about 3 or 4 years ago when we started allowing stipends. The dam was broken. The toothpaste was out of the tube. We can't force it back in. We know at this point in time, athletes will be paid one way or another for their services, whether that's across the board, whether it's for only celebrities, the NIL, whatever. What would you like to see happen as an athletic director at UAB in order to pay your players, because you know you're going to have to do it, but keep it fair?
Well, before cost of attendance started, we were already paying players. So the misunderstanding here is that we're paying for them to go to college. We pay for all their equipment. We pay their strength coaches to train them. You know, they don't pay a gym membership. They don't pay. If you wanted a personal trainer, you'd have to go get a gym membership and then pay that personal trainer to write a workout for you. They don't do that. We pay for their tutors. We pay for their books. We pay for the place that they live. We pay for all their food. We were already doing all those things. And they didn't necessarily have to do anything but show up to practice. Yep. They didn't have to be any good. They never had to play 1 second for their team. And they got all those things. And so these decisions have been made, Tony, based on like the Heisman Trophy winner. What could the Heisman Trophy winner get? Okay, well, that person won the Heisman Trophy, the player of the year in the league or whatever, the MVP of the championship. We're making decisions based on what a couple of people maybe could get in an endorsement deal for the 200,000 student athletes that are out there every year, many of whom don't even participate hardly other than show up to practice. And so we were already paying them. Then we layered in cost of attendance. And so now we're doing that. And that's the amount of money that you can give through cost of attendance is based on through the Board of Education at the federal level. It has not, I don't set that number. That number is set by the federal government. And that's good because it prevents me from manipulating that number, me the AD, wherever I work. But it is puzzling why, a school in a rural, sort of rural college town might be able to give $5,000 and then a big city school only give $1,000. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the big city school, their cost of living is higher, but part of it is travel and how easy it is to travel to that big city. And it all goes into the equation anyhow. Not to get sidetracked, but then we started paying them through cost of attendance. Now, of the student athletes who are of true need, and that's another, they get sort of taken advantage of, is this discussion around the student athlete that has all this true need. Again, we're paying for everything that they do. Well, they also get a federal Pell Grant. Well, that Pell Grant is a lot of money. I mean, it's almost $8,000 a year.
Yeah.
So if I'm paying for everything that you do, and you have $8,000. Oh, and now I give you a cost of attendance stipend that could be anywhere from probably $1,500 a year to almost $6,000 a year, depending on where the school is. I mean, that's a lot of money. I don't know how many other students get that, and I don't know how many other, if you're on a music scholarship, you don't get that stuff. And I mean, you would get the Pell if you qualify for the Pell. You get the Pell. But we're already doing a number of these things for these student athletes. And again, there are more kids that we recruit that don't play than there are kids that we recruit who do play. Yeah. And especially in the sport of football. There are players that every team, nobody recruits a kid saying, I don't think he'll ever play for us, or but it happens, whether it's through injury or they show up and their work ethic is not what we thought it was, or they just sort of lose interest in doing it. They just sort of go through the motions. They don't give energy. It's shocking. And through legislation like what you talked about, and the NCAA legislation that is coming soon, which is that the kid can just quit and we still have to pay for them to go to college. We are just breeding this mentality of entitlement and selfishness, that they don't have to work to earn anything.
Yeah.
Like they owe us, or sorry, that we owe them for allowing them to be there.
Listen, I mean, the truth of the matter, and we're not, listen, student athletes, we're not giving them a hard time here, because I can't honestly say that if I was a student athlete and I knew I was worth something and I had the opportunity to get it, I wouldn't fight for it. I get that. Real interesting story.
Hold on, Tony.
Yeah.
I'm in this. I do what I do because I love the student athlete, because I love being a student athlete. I loved my experience that I had as a student athlete. What's hard is you're trying to, as you just said, not beat up the student athlete, but at the same time defend yourself, because nobody's standing up and saying, look at what we all do for the student athlete.
Yeah.
We do a lot.
Absolutely.
And we continue to do a lot, and we want to do more. But, you kind of, again, at the federal level, it's talked about as if we just treat them terribly. Nobody's being treated terribly. Everybody's getting a great experience, but not everybody gets to be an All-American.
I'd love I'd love to get your thoughts on another situation. Obviously, a woman who has done an amazing job, not only for her sport in her university, but also for herself, and that being Olivia Dunn. The story's kind of gotten out of control a little bit. Obviously, she's got 6.7 million followers. She is a great gymnast for LSU, and now she's showing up at LSU matches, and she's got her own fan base for obvious reasons. She is only 20 years of age, and now there are groups of guys who obviously follow her, show up at their meets that potentially probably wouldn't be watching gymnastics on a Saturday afternoon, saying, we want Livy, and several boosters and people at these gymnast meets are saying that it's cringeworthy. It's starting to get, there's a creep value that's starting to creep into the situation. As an athletic director, you obviously want players that are going to put butts in seats and bring notoriety to your program, even when it's not a good program. In this particular case, it is a great program. Can you tell me, as an athletic director, how that would make you feel? We certainly seen U.S. gymnastics and what they've gone through from all the allegations over the last few years. Obviously, this is a very attractive and formidable foe. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's making millions of dollars by using that. But can you kind of tell me your thoughts on what you do as an athletic director if you had a bunch of goons showing up at UAB gymnastics to look at one of your gymnasts?
Yeah. So I have 4 children, Tony, and my youngest, who's a daughter, is a gymnast. And so I'm aware of the young lady that you're talking about. I know who she is because my daughter, watches, I guess, follows her or whatever. And going back to our NIL conversation, she has created a large following because she is a gymnast and attractive, and she has endorsement deals with, I think, some clothing lines and things. That's what NIL was supposed to be. Okay. NIL was supposed to be, it is your name, image, and likeness, and she is benefiting and profiting from her name, image, and likeness, which she is able to do at the level she's able to do because she is also an elite gymnast, not just because she is, did you say her name is Livy Dunn?
Yeah, Livy Dunn.
It's not just
Olivia.
because she's what was a high school girl named Livy Dunn, who took a bunch of pictures, in fancy outfits or whatever. She is that, but she is also an elite gymnast, which is what skyrockets her, sort of fame and her association with one of the best programs in the country, which is LSU. Those things are tied together, but that's what it was supposed to be. So hats off to her for figuring out a way to do it right. But to your question about the creep factor, I remember being at prior to here, I was at Temple University, and we played all of our games where the Philadelphia Eagles play. And so I had a lot of interaction with their management about, just the operations of the stadium, and, the team's going to walk in here and at this time and kick off as whatever. And at some point, we were talking about fan parking, and there's this parking lot off to the side of the stadium. It's pretty close, though, and it's got this huge iron gate around it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking about could fans park there, and they said, "Well, no." And they said, we realize that you're not these people aren't going to be here, but that's where our cheerleaders park. And I said, "Okay, but they're not going to be at my games." They said, "Yeah, but it's like the most secure lot that they have."
Yeah.
And it's because these attractive young women are smiling and dancing, and they're looking at the crowd, and they're entertaining, and they're and these creepy people, I guess, they just get convinced that these women are looking at them. Mm-hmm. They're just looking at the crowd,
Sure.
They're just being friendly and like smiley and whatever, and they're doing their job. And then I guess they had kind of a similar problem. They're, waiting, I don't know her name, but she wanted, I think she wanted to meet me or talk. Like, no, man.
Yeah.
She's just doing her job. And so sadly, I guess this is not totally unusual, but you got to provide. Listen, we do everything we can to protect our young student athletes in every way that we can, mainly from their safety and their health and welfare. This is a new level of security that I suppose LSU is having to deal with. When I played in college, I played with two guys, Heath Schuler and Peyton Manning, who were both Heisman Trophy runners-up. And, when we would go to the team hotel, man, they would have to go in through the loading dock. They didn't ride with the team. They had to ride in a squad car and go to the loading dock with the police and go through some, back channel hallway and take the service elevator to avoid the lobby because they would just get mobbed at the lobby. Yeah. So for different reasons, Tony, it's not the first time that I bet LSU has had to deal with this. They probably had to do it with Joe Burrow and all the other great players that they've had along the way. But it's
the difference here, though, is obviously it's a female. And second of all, right. she is 20, which she's illegal. But she eggs it on. I mean, she knows.
Is that right?
Well, I mean, she's got 6.7 million followers, and obviously she wears clothing that is quite essential to what she does. And she's loving the notoriety because she's building herself a brand. I'm not faulting her for that, but it is very, very interesting. Hey, listen. It's kind of like the Olympic curling team who did the nude calendar several years ago, and a lot of people had a major issue with it. But it brought in notoriety to the curling team, and it also brought a lot of financial resources that the team needed in order to compete in the Olympics. It's just a really sticky. There's a creep value there. It's a little uncomfortable. And I know as two men talking about it, we're probably not the experts to be talking about this.
No.
She's a young lady who's obviously very attractive and she's very good at what she does. And I would say this, and I've seen it from several athletes who obviously use their sex appeal or their look in order to get further along. And that's great. But realize that if you're not successful in the field you're in, that is athleticism, whether it's gymnastics or golf or anything else, that eventually that's going to go away, and that's important to remember. Mark Ingram joins us here. He's the UAB athletic director. This is called the UAB Director's Chair right here. We've got a couple of emails here. Tim, who's down on the campus down at UAB, is a big UAB basketball fan and wants to know, obviously he's not real crazy about how the team's performed over the last couple of weeks. Wanted to know if Mark Ingram knows who's coming back next season and how is recruiting looking for the 2023-2024 UAB Blazers basketball team.
Well, Tim, I'm not sure that Coach Kennedy would disagree with your feelings about the team, and nor would the team. They've lost. I'm going to get this wrong probably, so I shouldn't say that. Let's see, we lost by 2 points, then 3 points in overtime. Then we lost by 2 points, and then I think we lost by 1 point.
And you did it without your star basketball player.
You do it without the guy that's the player of the year that's averaging 25 points a game.
Yeah.
And that's hard, man. And so, getting the rhythm of the squad without that guy. We had this, 5 or 6 years ago when Nick Norton tore his ACL game 1 of the season, and all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, who's going to bring the ball up, and who's going to be the guy that we know will make a free throw and has to make one, and who's going to be the guy that distributes to the other, players that can't necessarily create their own shot, but he creates shots for them. It's a total rework of the system. And you say, well, you ought to have a backup. Well, the backup is a backup for a reason. The backup is not the starter. And so anyway, that's hard. I know Coach has had a couple mid-year signees that he's excited about, and obviously excited about the guys that he's recruiting. If he can lock in the guys that he thinks he'll lock in, he's thrilled about the future. But we've got a number of guys, I think it's 6 or 7, who finished this year, seniors that, can't come back. So it'll be a sort of a wholesale squad change. And then you never know with the transfer portal what that may bring. If somebody feels like their talents would be better served somewhere else, you may have somebody that could come back that chooses at the end of the season to, make a decision to go elsewhere. And I don't know what that looks like. And I'm not sure that even if they were thinking that they would have made that known yet, even to Coach Kennedy at this point. At least not that I'm aware of, they haven't. So it'll be a sort of a large roster change because of so many graduates.
And it's always fun. I mean, I love to see new names come into the program, and obviously with Andy Kennedy and his prowess and his recruiting prowess, I have no doubt they're going to be very competitive in the future as well. Let's get into some pro action. I know your wife's from Cincinnati. No matter when you're listening to this podcast, the Bengals taking on Kansas City. We know what the Bengals, they have owned Kansas City, beating them the last 3 times with Patrick Mahomes. I got in this debate last night with my son. He's like, I want to see Mahomes play this weekend for the AFC Championship because I want to beat their best. I'm like, BS. I want to see him sit. I hope that ankle swells up the size of his head. I said, whatever it takes to get back to the Super Bowl, son. I said, you take it. I get it. What is your wife and what is the husband of a wife who's from Cincinnati, a big Bengals fan? What would you like to see? We beat Mahomes the last 3 times. There's no reason to think we couldn't beat him again. But I mean, if we could beat him without Mahomes, I would be okay with that too.
Well, I tell you, man, my house is electric right now about the NFL because our 2 favorite teams are the Bengals and the Eagles because we lived in Philly for 3 years. You would think my 2 boys, you would think that they were raised in a cheesesteak shop. The way that they love Philly pro sports. They love the Sixers. They love the Phillies. They love the Eagles. We really never got into hockey. But if they had to pick a team, I'm sure they'd pick the Flyers. Yeah. So they're fired up. And man, of the teams last weekend that looked the best, I would have to say Cincinnati and Philadelphia were the 2 who look the best, and they could meet in the Super Bowl if they both win this weekend, which would be really exciting for our house, sort of a house divided. But yeah, Amy Ingram loves the Bengals and always has, and she wears her Joe Burrow jersey when they play, and she's got this coffee mug that she was given for Christmas by her sister-in-law that says "Cup of," and then it has a face of Joe Burrow.
I love that.
And it's hilarious.
Yeah, my son got an autographed helmet from Joe Burrow for Christmas.
Is that right? That's very
best
cool.
Christmas gift he ever got, man. He loves the autograph stuff, so he's into it big time. All right, finally.
I think it's always fun to see new teams in it, right? The Patriots dynasty is just is an incredible thing, and hats off to them. But it's nice to see new teams. I think that's important for sport, right? To whether it's that league or any league, to have a variety. That's why I thought it was so good that TCU was in the football championship. I know that Georgia had their way with them in that game, but good for them and good for the sport to have another team from a different league in it. I thought that was really valuable and would be again this year.
And the great thing is your Final Four, Philadelphia, the Niners, Kansas City, Cincinnati, they're about as equal as it gets. I mean, they're all just fantastic. And I can't remember the last time we had 4 teams left in the National Football League.
The Niners defense is tough, man.
Woo. Yeah, and I mean, you put everything on their quarterback. He doesn't have to do that much right now because their defense is so stinking good, but they also haven't seen a guy like Jalen Hurts all year too, so we'll see what happens this weekend. Right. Mark Ingram, one final question here. This is the UAB Athletics Director's Chair, and you can listen to the show as many times you want on podcast, and we certainly play it here on Tony Kurre Radio on the TKR app. But download that app, be one of 100,000 folks who've already gotten that and listen to some great classic rock and roll and unique programming as you only get here with Mark Ingram and Tony Kurre on TKR. On this date, Eddie Van Halen, his birthday, he would have been 68 today.
Pardon me, McGraw?
I want you to give me your favorite Van Halen song and why. What does it remind you of? I know you're a big classic rock hound. We had an interesting show talking about Edward this morning. But yeah, he would have been 68 today. Give me your favorite Van Halen song and why.
Oh man. I'm gonna. So you can't, if you're talking about Eddie Van Halen, you can't not love, and if you love, their music, you can't not love Spanish Fly and Eruption, right?
Oh,
These things are incredible.
Yeah.
And then, but it's, sort of mainstream that, songs from the band I loved. Ain't Talking About Love and Unchained are two of my favorites in that era. Those were two that I just dearly loved. And I don't know, they're a little more edgy. And show off his skills, but like all those songs did.
Eddie said that Unchained was his favorite song he played live.
Is that right?
That song. And if you listen to that song, man, it sounds like five dudes in a garage down the street playing. And that's what you said. It sounds raw and it's in your face. I mean, it's not perfect, and that's what makes the song so perfect. I totally agree with the Spanish Fly. Wow, I hadn't heard that in a while. I'll have to listen to that and celebrate. Hey, Mark, great stuff. We'll catch up next week, my brother. I appreciate you. Go to UABsports.com, UABsports.com to find out everything going on with Blazer Nation, and greatly appreciate your time, man.
Thank you so much, Tony. Have a great day.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.